Daniel had always preferred the quiet corners of the classroom, where the shuffle of papers and the low hum of voices blurred into a background he could safely disappear into. At 17, he was known for his silence rather than his presence. His classmates rarely noticed him unless he was paired with them for group work, and even then, he remained the boy who spoke softly, scribbled diligently, and retreated as soon as the task was complete. To most, Daniel was simply shy. To himself, he was someone guarding a heart too fragile to risk exposure. Only Michael ever broke through the walls Daniel built. Michael, with his easy smile and confident stride, seemed to belong everywhere Daniel felt out of place. Their friendship stretched back to childhood, a bond rooted in loyalty and unspoken understanding. Michael often teased him about being invisible, but his laughter was never cruel. Instead, it carried the warmth of someone determined to protect Daniel from the harsher edges of the world. Still, Michael could not see everything Daniel carried. When Ethan arrived midway through the school year, the classroom's atmosphere shifted. Tall, with a careless charm that drew attention like gravity, he seemed to belong instantly. Students leaned toward him, eager to share their names, their jokes, their admiration. Daniel, however, could only watch. Something in Ethan's presence unsettled him, stirring feelings he did not know how to name. His eyes lingered longer than he intended, his thoughts strayed when Ethan's laughter rippled through the room. Daniel told himself it was harmless, a fascination that would pass. But a restless ache told him otherwise. Daniel was not inexperienced with love, though no one in school would have believed it. Behind his quiet face lay a secret he carried with trembling care. His tutor, Mr. Collins, had been more than a mentor for nearly a year. At 25, Mr. Collins possessed the patience Daniel needed in his studies, but what began as guidance had shifted into something forbidden. Their meetings were cloaked in discretion, always at the tutor's small apartment where books crowded every shelf and shadows hid what the world would never understand. With Mr. Collins, Daniel felt desired in a way his peers could not imagine. The older man's compliments soothed his insecurities, his touch erased Daniel's doubts, if only for a little while. Yet even in those moments of closeness, guilt pressed down like a weight. He knew what they shared could not last, but the thought of losing it left him hollow. And so he lived in two worlds, the dutiful student under the sunlit roof of the school, and the secret lover behind the closed door of Mr. Collins's apartment. Still, when Ethan brushed past him in the hallway, Daniel felt a spark that unsettled him more than any stolen night. Ethan's voice, rich with curiosity, seemed to call to parts of him that Mr. Collins's careful affection never reached. It was not maturity that stirred him now, but possibility, the dizzy, intoxicating pull of someone his own age noticing him. Daniel wrestled with the thought, chastising himself for even imagining what it might be like to stand in Ethan's orbit. Michael, always perceptive, noticed the way Daniel's eyes trailed after Ethan. He nudged him one afternoon as they left class, grinning. "You keep staring like that, he's going to catch you." Daniel flushed crimson and shook his head, denying it, though his heart betrayed him with its rapid thrum. Michael laughed it off, but his glance lingered, curious. The days stretched forward, each one tightening the invisible thread between Daniel's secret world and the new emotions rising within him. He tried to convince himself that loyalty should anchor him to Mr. Collins, the man who had given him courage when he felt invisible. Yet loyalty did little to silence the restless flutter in his chest whenever Ethan entered the room. As winter gave way to spring, Daniel felt the quiet stability of his hidden life begin to shift. He did not yet know where it would lead, only that the pull was growing stronger and harder to resist. For the first time in months, he feared not only discovery but choice, the impossible decision between the safety of the love he already held and the dangerous allure of the one that had only just begun to awaken. And though he told himself he would never cross that line, deep down Daniel knew the story had only begun. The first time Daniel and Ethan were paired together, it was by accident, or at least, that was what the teacher claimed. A literature project needed partners, and with uneven numbers in the class, the shy boy found himself face to face with the newcomer. Daniel's heart pounded when Ethan slid into the seat beside him, smiling with the kind of ease that made everyone feel chosen. "You don't talk much, do you?" Ethan teased lightly, opening his notebook. His voice carried no malice, only curiosity. Daniel shook his head, eyes fixed on the desk. I talk enough, he murmured, but Ethan chuckled, not unkindly. Good. Then I'll do the talking, and you can keep me from failing. For the rest of the period, Daniel found himself listening to Ethan ramble about music, late-night gaming sessions, and dreams of traveling beyond the small town they all felt trapped in. Daniel barely contributed, yet he felt strangely alive just sitting there, the air between them buzzing with an energy he couldn't explain. Over the next week, the project gave them reasons to meet after class. They lingered in the library, whispering over highlighted passages, their heads nearly touching as they bent over the same page. Daniel tried to keep his distance, but Ethan had a way of breaking down his walls without even trying. When Ethan laughed at one of Daniel's hesitant comments, not mocking but genuinely delighted, Daniel's chest warmed in a way that startled him. Michael noticed almost immediately. One afternoon, as they packed their bags, Michael leaned close. "Careful, Dan," he said in a half-joking tone. "He's got that look that makes people do stupid things." Daniel blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Michael said, slinging his bag over his shoulder, "you're not exactly subtle. You blush every time he breathes in your direction." The words burned, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Daniel tried to laugh it off, insisting that it was only a school project, nothing more. Michael didn't push, but the concern in his eyes lingered long after the conversation ended. That evening, Daniel went to see Mr. Collins as planned. The tutor greeted him warmly, ushering him inside the familiar apartment filled with the scent of coffee and old books. They reviewed equations for a while, but Mr. Collins soon reached for Daniel's hand, lacing their fingers together. His touch was steady, practiced, reassuring. "You're distracted," Mr. Collins said softly, searching Daniel's face. Daniel's heart skipped. He forced a smile. "Just tired. Schoolwork, you know." But the lie tasted bitter. While Mr. Collins kissed his forehead, Daniel's mind drifted back to the library, to Ethan's grin and the way his laughter had echoed in Daniel's ears long after it ended. The contrast was stark. Mr. Collins offered safety, maturity, a love hidden in shadow. Ethan offered something lighter, brighter, yet terrifying in its possibility. Days blurred into weeks, and Daniel could no longer deny the current pulling him toward Ethan. They stayed late after class, finishing their project long before the deadline but inventing excuses to meet again. Ethan started walking him halfway home, chatting about nothing and everything, and Daniel found himself laughing in ways he never had with anyone else. The ease between them frightened him, because it felt dangerously close to what he secretly longed for. One afternoon, as they packed up their notes in the library, Ethan hesitated. His voice dropped, hesitant for the first time since Daniel had met him. "I like talking to you. More than anyone else here." Daniel froze. His pulse roared in his ears. "Why?" he whispered. "Because you're real," Ethan said simply, his gaze steady. "Everyone else wants to impress. You just listen." The silence that followed stretched taut, filled with words neither dared to say. For a heartbeat, Ethan leaned closer, his hand brushing Daniel's. The touch sent a shiver racing through him, but panic surged just as quickly. Daniel pulled his hand back, forcing a nervous laugh. "We should finish this tomorrow," he muttered, gathering his things. Ethan let him go, but not before Daniel caught the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. That night, Daniel lay awake, torn between guilt and desire. Mr. Collins's affection weighed heavy on his conscience, yet Ethan's nearness haunted him with an ache that refused to fade. He told himself he had done the right thing by resisting, but deep down, he knew the boundary he clung to was weakening. Temptation was no longer an idea, it was alive, pressing closer each day, and Daniel feared that soon, he would no longer be able to resist it. The library was nearly empty when it happened. Golden light streamed through tall windows, painting dust motes in the air as Daniel and Ethan gathered their books. Their project had been finished for weeks, yet they continued meeting, inventing reasons neither dared to name aloud. Ethan lingered, his hand resting too long on the edge of the table. "Daniel," he said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Can I tell you something?" Daniel nodded, his chest tightening. I like you," Ethan admitted, his voice steady but vulnerable. "Not just as a friend. More than that." The words hung in the air, raw and undeniable. Daniel's breath caught. He wanted to deny it, to retreat behind walls of caution and loyalty, but the truth pressed against his lips, aching to be released. I like you too," he whispered. Ethan's smile was small, almost fragile, as though he'd been waiting for this moment with more hope than certainty. He stepped closer, his presence warm and overwhelming. Daniel's heart raced, torn between the safety of silence and the hunger of desire. When Ethan leaned in, Daniel didn't move away. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft yet electric, sending a jolt through every part of him. For a few seconds, the world vanished, the library, the risk, the guilt. There was only the taste of Ethan's breath and the trembling realization that he had crossed a line he could never uncross. When they pulled apart, Daniel's face burned with both joy and dread. "We shouldn't have," he murmured, though the words rang hollow. Ethan searched his eyes. "Do you regret it?" Daniel couldn't answer. His silence was enough. That night, he went to see Mr. Collins as planned. The apartment felt different, as though the kiss still clung to him, invisible but undeniable. Mr. Collins welcomed him with his usual tenderness, pressing a kiss to his temple, but Daniel stiffened under the touch. Every moment of intimacy felt heavier now, as if weighed down by his secret betrayal. "You're distant again," Mr. Collins observed, frowning slightly. "Is something wrong?" Daniel forced a smile. "Just tired. School's been busy." But when Mr. Collins kissed him, Daniel's mind betrayed him, conjuring Ethan's smile, Ethan's warmth, Ethan's kiss. Shame coiled in his chest, but the memory refused to let go. The next day, Michael saw them. Daniel and Ethan were walking out of the library together, laughing in a way that was far too intimate for friendship. Michael's sharp gaze caught the lingering look in Daniel's eyes, the flush in his cheeks. Later, when they were alone, Michael confronted him. "You're hiding something," Michael said firmly. Daniel froze. "What do you mean?" Michael crossed his arms, his voice low. "Don't play dumb. I saw you with Ethan. And I know you don't look at people like that unless it means something. Are you sure you know what you're doing?" The question cut deeper than Daniel expected. He wanted to confess everything, to admit his secret love for Mr. Collins, his betrayal, his confusion, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he muttered, "It's complicated." Michael sighed, frustration and concern mingling in his expression. "Then figure it out before someone gets hurt. Especially you." The warning echoed in Daniel's head long after Michael walked away. In the days that followed, Daniel felt his life unraveling. Ethan wanted more than stolen moments, he wanted honesty, clarity, something real. Mr. Collins, too, grew restless with Daniel's distance, pressing for reassurance that their bond still mattered. Daniel stood in the middle, pulled apart by loyalties that could not coexist. One evening, Ethan cornered him in the school courtyard. "I don't want to be a secret," Ethan said, his voice firm but pained. "If you care about me, I need you to choose." The demand shook Daniel to his core. Choice meant betrayal, no matter the direction. He could not bear to wound Ethan, yet he could not deny the hold Mr. Collins still had on him. Silence became his only defense, but silence was its own form of betrayal. That night, walking home under the fading sky, Daniel realized there was no way back to who he had been. The kiss had changed everything. His love for Mr. Collins was no longer untainted, his bond with Ethan no longer innocent. He had stepped into a world where loyalty and desire clashed, leaving scars no apology could erase, and yet, beneath the guilt, a quiet truth stirred: he was no longer invisible. For the first time, he was seen, wanted, torn between loves that revealed the complexity of his own heart. Daniel walked on, uncertain of where the path would lead, but certain that he could never return to the simplicity of before. The secret love of a shy boy had become a tangled story of choices, betrayals, and the painful beauty of growing up. Daniel avoided the library for days. The room that had once felt safe now carried the weight of his kiss with Ethan, a memory that burned whenever he closed his eyes. He told himself distance would help, that silence could rebuild the fragile walls crumbling inside him. But silence only left him alone with his thoughts, and the more he tried to bury them, the louder they screamed. At school, Ethan's presence was impossible to escape. He lingered in hallways, glanced across classrooms, his eyes filled with questions Daniel refused to answer. Each look felt like a plea, but Daniel kept his gaze lowered, hoping indifference could erase what had already been done. Yet guilt clung to him, not only for Ethan but for Mr. Collins, who still waited in his apartment each week with a tenderness Daniel no longer deserved. When Daniel finally returned to tutoring, Mr. Collins noticed the shift instantly. "You're restless," he said, his tone sharper than usual. "What's going on?" Daniel hesitated. His voice caught in his throat. "Nothing." But Mr. Collins leaned closer, searching his face with an intensity that made Daniel flinch. "Don't lie to me. If there's someone else," his words trailed off, heavy with suspicion. Daniel's silence confirmed what he could not confess. Mr. Collins drew back, his expression wounded yet guarded, as though bracing himself against betrayal he had always feared. The distance between them widened, and Daniel felt it like a knife twisting deep inside. Meanwhile, Michael's watchful eyes missed nothing. One evening, as they walked home, he spoke plainly. "You're falling apart. Talk to me, Dan." Daniel's steps slowed. For the first time, the words spilled out, fragmented confessions of Ethan's kiss, of Mr. Collins's growing doubt, of the storm that left him gasping for air. Michael listened without judgment, though his brow furrowed with concern. "You can't live in two worlds forever," Michael said softly. "Sooner or later, you'll lose both." The truth of it struck Daniel harder than any accusation. He wanted to believe he could balance it all, but the threads were unraveling faster than he could mend them. Days later, Ethan found him alone under the bleachers after class. The boy's usual brightness had dimmed, replaced with quiet determination. "I can't keep waiting," Ethan said, his voice steady but pained. "Do you want me or not?" Daniel's heart raced. He wanted to say yes, to surrender to the warmth that Ethan offered so freely. But the weight of Mr. Collins pressed down, and fear of hurting both paralyzed him. His lips parted, but only silence emerged. Ethan exhaled, frustration flashing across his face. "You think staying quiet makes this easier, but it doesn't. It just breaks us both." With that, he walked away, leaving Daniel staring after him, torn and breathless. That night, Daniel sat at his desk, staring at a blank page in his notebook. Words had always been his refuge, but now even poetry failed him. His pen hovered, shaking, until finally he scrawled a single line. "I don't know how to love without breaking something." That he closed the book, burying it beneath his textbooks as though hiding the confession would make it less true. The days that followed blurred into a haze of avoidance. He skipped tutoring sessions, dodged Ethan in the halls, and offered Michael only half-hearted reassurances. Yet avoidance brought no peace. The weight of choice pressed heavier each day, suffocating him with the knowledge that his silence was its own form of betrayal. One evening, walking home beneath a sky painted in fading gold, Daniel stopped at the edge of the bridge overlooking the river. The water below shimmered, restless and unyielding. He leaned against the railing, his breath trembling as he whispered to the wind, "I can't keep doing this." In that moment, he knew the truth: indecision was no longer possible. Whether he chose Mr. Collins, Ethan, or neither, the time for hiding was over. His heart had led him into shadows, but he could not live there forever. As the sun slipped beneath the horizon, Daniel turned toward home, each step heavy with the knowledge that the next choice he made would change everything.